unexpected wings and experiments, the reveal of a new chapter, and the tiniest hint of something hidden among amazing choreography. Every year during the award shows, both the Melon Music Awards, the MMAs, and the Mamas, Hype brings us hints at their ongoing stories and previews of what's to come for each of their groups. And despite how late this video is, seeing as I think everyone forgot about the award shows at this point, I figured now is the perfect time to do a deep dive. So let's go. Hi, I'm Lena and I make Hype theories, reactions, content on Hype stuff, and like the universes and the lore and all of that fun, exciting stuff. So yeah, this video will be sectioned into different parts depending on groups, so you can just jump to the group that you want. It's all fine. Also, just a reminder to give this video a thumbs up so it can reach more people. I really appreciate it. Also, shout out to New Jeans for having an amazing performance. I'm not going to cover them here because there's no lore currently associated with them and like no storyline and stuff, but like 10 out of 10, loved their performance. I'm loving them. Anyways, let's go! Enhypen. So let's start with Enhypen and their MMA performance. Although I will cover a bit of their Mama performance as well, I just want to brief you on Enhypen's story so you're not going in blind. There will be spoilers here. If you want to read the story first, I recommend that you do that and come back. Essentially, there are two times that you need to keep in mind. The past timeline where Enhypen were knights and turned into vampire lords in order to protect the princess, and the modern times where they've forgotten all of that past stuff and are hiding their vampire identities. Here they grew up in an oppressive orphanage that they escaped over 100 years ago. And now they're at an academy playing Nightball against some werewolves, but their past timeline is slowly catching up with them in the form of other vampires. And it kind of seems like themselves and the princess, who's been reincarnated, are the only ones who don't really know what's going on, but everyone else does. I really recommend reading Dark Moon, The Blood Altar for more information if that's something that you wanted to do. Otherwise, let's go and talk about the performance. So this performance starts with a name, New Moon. Now the new moon isn't actually visible right off the bat. In fact, it's the opposite. It starts with a full moon. But the new moon does make an appearance later on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that then. Their dance starts off with them in a glass box, reminding me a lot of their Let Me In music video. They're trapped and wanting to break free. The dance itself here also reflects that. This actually tells us about several different forms of trapping within their storyline. Them being turned into vampires originally, for example. This is often framed as either a blessing or a curse, so it could have actually made them feel trapped. We actually aren't sure yet, since we don't actually know much about the past timeline. Or it could potentially be related to them being trapped in the orphanage as they grew up as children. Perhaps it can reference their memories, which were apparently wiped when their powers were sealed and they were sent to this future timeline. I know I glossed over that, but that was a thing that happened. However, even within these trappings, there's something that's connecting them all together. We know the vampire boys are pretty close, so this could be saying that, like, even though they're all trapped and confused, they're at least all together. I don't know, it could be cute, even though the dance is, like, more epic than it is cute. I mean, they were always previously walking the line, and in Past the Mic, they even say they hate the line. So, like, eventually they discard it. But I like to think that the line originally connected them all, like we're shown here. But anyways, eventually they free themselves, and the box that they were in is lifted away. They escape, much like how they escaped the orphanage, I think. As with past performances in VCRs, this goes out with a glitch at the end. I still don't have an explanation for that, but it is prominent enough that I feel like I should mention it. Because, like, hello? Why does their whole world glitch frequently? It makes me think of, like, what they referenced with The Matrix in Blessed Cursed, their music video. Like, what's real? What can you believe? Anyways, coincidentally, they actually performed Blessed Cursed right after this, so fun. Which also, in the original music video, which actually shows them, like, when they're founding their company, this is an IT company, because that's what they tell us in the behind of that music video. So maybe that's why it's glitching, because, ooh, fun science IT stuff. But we do know the company was formed after they escaped and before, like, the current event. So timeline-wise, it totally matches up. They escaped the orphanage and found their company in Blessed Cursed, which could also be a blessing and a curse, I guess. But then also thinking of the past timeline, them wondering if their given abilities were a blessing or a curse also fits here. And I actually think what we're shown right after this is actually in the past timeline, although it could be something that we'll see in the future. And I think this is probably the most exciting part of the performance, because when I asked you guys, hey, what kind of questions do you have about the MMA performance, this is the one that came up the most. Sungoon and his wings. I did already make a bit of a theory about this if you saw the theory short video that I did, but let me discuss that in more detail because there's really only so much that you can fit into a 1-minute video and it's not enough. We don't have a 1-minute cutoff time here, so... First, a woman walks on stage with a syringe in her hands. This woman is most likely Trenna, who was originally part of the court in the past timeline, and who joins the ranks of some man who is also in the court named Darden, and he is a major antagonist of the story. So Trenna, this woman, is working for Darden, and he actually originally turns Trenna into a vampire using his blood. But to explain that, we actually need to go even further back to a time of gods. Once upon a time, there existed a wolf god named Vargur. Now, we aren't exactly sure how, but Vargur was gonna die. Okay? He was gonna, you know? So, as a gift to the royal family, who I guess, like, worked with him somehow, they were described as being shamanic, which gets passed on through the royal family bloodline. They were shamans. He gifts their blood to them to use in a situation of an emergency for the royal family. So it will only work for the royal family, should anything happen to them. And it does. Fast forward to the princess of our tale. She has an illness and everyone decides, hey, you know that blood we got from the god of the wolves? Well, we should use that so that she can be healed. And so that's what they do. She's instructed to drink it. So when she goes up onto the platform in order to do just that, far out of sight where no one can quite see her properly, the blood kind of goes and like jumps into her body and it's absorbed because the blood knows what it was for and that it was meant to help the royal family. This happening is what gives her her abilities, which we assume are the same, at least turning into fog and potentially super strength, and potentially further more abilities than that. But the main reason that they gave her the blood in the first place was to heal her illness and was not to gain these abilities. That part was that was unexpected. I'd been really vague explaining how this happened in the past, but I did just want to detail exactly what happens here with this blood. The blood was gifted to her and her bloodline alone. So presumably anyone else who tries to use it will be cursed. I assume this is where, like, the aversion to sunlight and stuff comes into play, but I'm not 100% sure, actually. Darden, however, sees the princess's abilities, and he's like, well, bro, I want that. I want to be powerful and strong or whatever with all these abilities, which I think that she has more abilities than just the strength and the fog, but she gifts them to her knights later on. Anyways, so Darden gets the blood somehow. It's not really described how he gets it, but he is in the high court, so maybe he just walked in. And then he tries to drink it. Obviously, it does not make him as strong as the princess. But it did do something. He starts experimenting with the blood. And eventually, presumably after the princess gives her powers to the knights and, like, makes them into vampires, gifting them her blood. So she, who had Vargur's blood absorbed into her, gifts her blood probably to the vampire lords. Well, the future vampire lords, the knights, the 7 boys, and then also potentially a few others. And mimicking that, Darden's like, okay, well, I have to do that too. So he gives his blood to Trenna. Notably, he gives his blood to Trenna. He saves Vargur's blood for himself. And then he begins calling himself the first vampire. So yes, she was a member of the court. She was already on his side, I guess, and he turns her into a vampire. But, like, you know, the person he really wanted at this time was the princess. However, it turns out the vampires that he creates are not that strong, and any vampires using their blood to create other vampires makes those other vampires not as strong and, like, more crazy and just, like, not having their wits about them, basically. So as you go down the line, they become more feral and out of control. So, like, more bloodlusty or whatever. And I assume this is part of the curse, because the blood was never meant for them. Ever. They didn't have the blessing of Vargur, but they used the wolf's blood anyways. Honestly, I think at this point, Darden was starting to get desperate. We know that some battle eventually broke out between him and those on the princess's side, since they had to send the vampire boys away in order to protect those powers, but we don't currently know the details about it, so Sorry. But here in this performance, this presents something interesting that we haven't seen before. Something that might give us some more information about what might have happened in that past timeline or that might happen in the future. It depends how you want to interpret this. And of course, whatever happened in the past also affects the boys in the present timeline. So in the recent webtoon chapter, number 26, I think, we see this explanation happen where they're sort of talking about Darden and all of the stuff I just told you about, and they're like, hey, Darden was doing forbidden experiments, and on the ground they show this syringe. And this exact syringe we see used to plunge into Sungoon's neck. Now, there are several things to note about Sungoon's character before I move on. His character, Solon, is presented not only as a vampire, nay, but also part wolf. He can turn into a wolf, and the wolves in the present timeline are like, whoa, you smell like a wolf. If you recall, Vargar, the god, you know, the blood that the princess used to get her powers in the first place and heal or whatever, he was, notably, not a vampire god, but he was a wolf god. It kind of seems a bit odd for them to become vampires, right? But the blood does seem to give them power in general, or, you know, the princess who gives it to them. And these vampire boys don't have to drink blood except once a year, which they do on their birthday, the day that they escaped the orphanage. So basically, they're strong with very little negative consequence. So say you're Darden and you're like, I want to dethrone the princess and get all these powers, and all of his experiments are seeming to fail and get weaker and more crazy time and time again. I feel like he's getting desperate to gain some sort of power. So if I were him, I'd be like, hey, I need to diversify my experiments. You know what I'm saying? Namely, taking someone who's already a vampire lord and already been blessed with power from the princess, and perhaps infusing more of the blood from the god into them that was not obtained legally. That was not forbidden anyway. It was gifted to him, right? But like, say you did that, just hypothetically, what would happen? Because also, like, potentially the blood that he's infusing into it isn't just pure blood. Maybe it's like experimental of some kind, like he's mixed it with some other stuff. I don't know. I wasn't there. But like, hypothetically, you get your lackey, Trina, that you just changed into a vampire and said, hey, here, go do this thing. I'm almost definitely certain that's kind of what happened here. Unless, like, in the future something clearly becomes this moment. It can only be Darden's experiments with this syringe. Why else would they make it match so perfectly? But if Darden did that, what sort of results would he get, do you think? The answer to that depends on multiple factors. For example, was Solon already able to turn into a wolf? Was he already part werewolf? Or full werewolf, I guess? Or was it the experiment that gave him that power? What do you think? Was this what gave him that ability? After all, besides the few times that he casts like fire magic in some specific music videos, we don't really see his power, and it's never been mentioned in the webtoon or web novel that he can do anything else. Maybe he can't. Maybe he doesn't know that he can't. So we don't really have a definitive answer on that. Why is it that he can only turn into a wolf? It seems a bit odd. But we are sort of shown the result of this experiment in the VCR that plays immediately after this moment. This whole VCR with Sungoon is very interesting. It shows us a red rose, which we saw as early as Choose Chosen, where one showed success and the other failure. But it is something that he's crushing, so make of that what you will. And then we've got like the chalice full of water that turns to blood. I assume that's the blood that was infused to him, and this is a metaphorical thing just in general, probably. It's not the first time we've seen water being, you know, turned with blood. So, anyways, the most important part of this VCR then happens, and this is the wings that grow from his back. And they do grow. He wasn't like concealing it before this point. We see them actually sprouting from his back. So this is a direct result of whatever just happened with him getting stabbed with the syringe. The wings that he sprouts are black, which is often associated with fallen angels or death. Specifically, Thanatos was said to have black wings. But just taking the idea of like angels in general, even if you think about the fact that, yeah, this is a corrupted angel, it supposedly acts under some form of God, right? maybe say a wolf god? If Solon was indeed already born a wolf before he was turned into a vampire, the wings that are here could signify the birth of something brand new. After all, he was already technically a child of the god, if you want to look at it that way. People have suggested to me on the comments of that short, by the way, that maybe he was a reincarnation of the wolf god. Perhaps somehow this blood awakened something within him. Or if he wasn't born a wolf, the reason that he can turn into one now might be reflected in this moment somehow. It's also possible that with the black wings here, he, with newfound power, brings death to many people in the timeline. Although not necessarily to the boys themselves. After all, everyone seemed to go through great lengths to save them, while everyone else, including I assume the princess herself, who seals and sends them off, dies, since, you know, she does get reincarnated. So I have a question for you. Which theory are you leaning towards here? Or do you have your own theory? Are these the wings of death? Is Sung-hoon's character a god? Certainly I do think that somehow these wings represent that he is very close, at least like right underneath the original god. But as some of you pointed out, perhaps he's the reincarnated version, or somehow it birthed the soul of the god within him, and maybe he just doesn't know yet. How is a god born after all? Does he know he's a god when he's born? Or maybe he does know. No, definitely not. Have you seen him? He's super cute though. Anyway, in the dance break that follows this VCR, we are pretty explicitly shown that the wings have grown to include the others. Again, making me wonder if this maybe encompasses all of them, the wings of death. Perhaps they're seen as angels of death to their enemies. Likewise, should we be worried that the only Enhypen song that seems to have the word wings in it is in Blessed Curse, and they say, "That lie that broke my wings"? Did someone's lie lead to their original downfall? We do also get a moment where Heesung and Jae are together and Heesung bites Jae, which I still don't fully understand. They do a lot of biting each other for some reason, but like we're never actually told or shown that they drink each other's blood. But I wonder if they're like in danger or something like that, if they can maybe drink each other's blood for like extra energy. I don't know, we just have never gotten an explanation, so that's me throwing in my 2 cents. Anyways, immediately after that, we also see Sunwoo and Jake, who seem to be, I don't even know, injured or something. They are upside down and suffering, and they seem to like break each other's necks, like there's a crack, and then proceed to drink their own blood from their wrists. I have no idea. Nikki then takes center stage for his dance break, which he does absolutely amazing in, and then also it conveniently keeps saying power during his dance break. Power, power. So remember how I said the new moon would appear? That was a while ago already. Well, it appears, by the way, during this entire dance section. And well, I mean, the story's literally called Dark Moon, the new moon. If werewolves get power on the full moon, I mean, wouldn't it figure that vampires, who are supposedly their opposite, would gain power during the new moon? I think this segment, even though it started out with something that Darden did to gain power, led to them eventually taking everything into their own hands. Something that also kind of mirrors the events of what is happening in their current comeback and music videos. So then of course it goes into Pass the Mic, their current comeback, and the song where they take power back into their own hands and then do things their way. At the end of this song, we see a waxing moon, which in moon terms means it happens immediately after a new moon. So we can assume this whole performance sort of showcases them coming into power, both in the past timeline where they had that one battle and also the present one where they're also battling the same people. So yeah, that's the end of that performance. Let's talk about the Mama performance now, shall we? It opens with the title, Manifesto Kakume, which means revolution. This is potentially the name of their next album, or at least a hint to it if it's not. Although I'd be surprised if they would give us this and then just not have that as the name. But this is set up for their entire performance, which, especially when it comes to the backgrounds, is basically the start of some sort of battle. Or of course, a revolution where they realize what it is that they want to change. Knowing that this is the theme, it's unsurprising that it opens with Blessed Cursed, the song that tells us to open our eyes and talks about how they were controlled in the lyrics. The background during the song shows the city, the foundation of their beliefs perhaps, cracking throughout the song itself. Story-wise, I'm not sure what this part represents. It could just be a fun thematic thing for the performance, though I wouldn't be surprised if their revolution happens like against the other vampires or something like that, or even that there was a revolution that they're standing up to the court on behalf of the princess in the past timeline, if you want to look at it that way, but I'm guessing this is the present timeline. Beyond that, there's not really a ton to discuss. It's just the normal performance of Blessed Curse. And the next part comes with excerpts from Manifesto Walk the Line, but where the line, you know, has been crossed out. It's that intro. Because they drew their own line. Get it? Revolution! They even have the drums, which I kind of feel is just like a revolution thing. Like, they always have that in movies, you know what I'm talking about? It's very much like, let's get hyped to do this revolution fight thing going on, and then they're pounding on the drums. Again, though, in this case, it might just metaphorically be like their beliefs that they're fighting. Like, maybe learning they're from the past timeline thing kind of, you know, destroys the whole foundation of everything that you ever believed. Or like escaping the orphanage. I don't know, something like that. There's many ways that you could probably interpret this. Basically, in line with their entire manifesto album and the previous performance, they decide that they will do things their way. Jungwon even brings it all down by himself with a stomp of his foot. The foundation of the lies that had been cracked crumbles down as they are past their mic and are now able to speak their truth. At the end here, the backup dancers take a victory pose because they entirely win. Like I said, this feels more symbolic, though there are ways to tie it into their story. Mostly the MMA performance had a lot more stuff in it because it had like the VCR and whatnot, but that's usually the case. One of the performances is usually more story heavy than the other. I'm guessing there's just not time to prepare for everything, and it doesn't make it less cool, so anyways. That was a lot. Hopefully that all made sense and stuff. If you have questions, let me know. I will try to answer the questions in the comments. Or if I don't answer, maybe someone else can help you out with replying. So if you see someone with a question that has not been answered yet, feel free to start a conversation there with them and answer them. But yes, that is all for Enhypen's section. Before we move on to TXT, I just want to remind you guys to give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. It really, really helps this video out and helps me out because I do spend a lot of time working on these kinds of videos and putting everything together and editing it. So yeah, it just really helps me out. Moving on. Outfit change. I hope that worked. Okay, so now we're going to talk about TXT, and we're going to start with the MMAs. They have a lovely little animated intro, which kind of just takes us right back to the whole storybook feel that they used to have, like, all the way back in, like, the Dream chapter. And, I will leave a translation for it in the description from Twitter. It was by Translating TXT. Thank you, they always pull through. I'm not going to read over it word by word. Basically, just takes us through the music videos of Nap of the Star and the lyrics of Crown, because if you didn't know, in the early Dream chapter stuff, the lyrics of the title track, so in this case Crown, were actually the storyline for the story music videos, the Starseekers music video. So all the lore that you're seeing in Nap of a Star is like verbalized in Crown lyrically. So basically this animation is like talking about how they made a promise to stay together underneath the star and how they're gonna come back together even if they're separated, which they immediately do. And like when they do this, they go their own way, right? And then they're growing. We see horns growing and stuff. And they wonder, oh no, am I a monster? So we're showing in the webtoon the context of growing these things. It's kind of when they use magic. And then afterwards they're in pain because of the world's law, like the rules of using magic is when you use too much of it, you like have a causality, so like an injury or cut. So if you ever see them with a bunch of cuts, that's probably what it was. They were using magic, a lot of magic, and it injures you in return because it's like a trade-off. But anyways, the horns and the wings especially are sort of tied to their true names and like the images of their true names. So these are like the pains that happen as they grow. And in a fun thing I noticed, because this video is super late, many of these images in the intro that they're showing us are of shadows, which is ironic because as we see in the name chapter, which came out like later than obviously this, we see that they're like referencing Peter Pan, who, you know, famously has to have his shadow sewn back on. Even Yeonjun in that video loses his shadow. I'm gonna make a different video covering the name chapter. It's on my list. It'll be the next bigger video, I think. I'm torn between that one and Team, so let me know which one you want to see first. But since we brought up the idea of names and true names, I just want to really quickly go over what they are because I'm going to discuss them throughout this video here and there, and it's just better that you know them going in. So we were first like introduced to the name of this concept, the name of this, in the Doom's Night video. That's where true names was first mentioned, I think. But as we'll talk about in a second, It's been talked about basically ever since they debuted, like from the moment they debuted, basically. The webtoon and web novel both gave us hints as to what their true name is, and we saw the images of their true name and the potential, I think, bad endings related to their true names. All of that imagery is directly related to true names, which, again, is the next chapter. I have explained true names and their true names in the past, but I feel like my understanding them has shifted slightly, so I'm just going to briefly kind of go over it again here now. So, like I said, in like the webtoon and the web novel, and I guess technically the Frost music video, they were given a hint of the true name, how they can discover their true name. So that was when they went to the fortune teller. The fortune teller does not tell them their true name, simply gives them a hint to figuring it out. However, I think that we knew their true names from the very beginning. Literally, with their introduction videos, like the questioning videos, at the end of those, there was a Morse code associated with each member. And I think the answer to the hint that we have been given are those Morse codes. The reason we think this is because we already technically got one answer. It'll make sense when I say it. So, Subin's hint was the one who is believed by no one. And he gets this image of like Cassandra, who's like a prophet and no one believes her. She's also holding the bead, so in the Frost music video it's related to the bead somehow. Anyways, the word that he has in his Morse code is tomorrow. So his true name is tomorrow. So no one believes Cassandra about tomorrow. Yeonjun's true name hint is the one who shall not eat dogs, which people always laugh at that one. I think it's based off of Kukalin, and the reason I think that is because his true name is Promise. The Morse code is Promise. Kukalin makes a promise that he will not eat dog meat, and then he's later tricked into eating dog meat kind of in a situation where he can't refuse it, because it would be like a terrible insult, basically. So he is tricked into breaking his promise, which if you have been following any of TXT's story, you kind of know, especially when Yeonjun has to make a contract with the cat, he's sort of tricked into it by the cat. He's backed into a situation. The cat could have helped him out earlier, first off, but like they're backed into a corner, they're being attacked, and that's when he makes a contract with the cat, at least in the webtoon. So he kind of didn't really have a choice. And then he's like, crap, like, I think I've doomed all my friends, like, he feels guilty, etc., all of that stuff. So if it reminds you of the situation with the cat, you're right. I think that's exactly what's going on here. Also, you might remember, in the intro, they talk about a promise to the star, and I don't think it's a coincidence that his true name is so closely tied to the plot, because he's the main character. A lot of the story takes place from his point of view. So just tying it in with the story itself makes a lot of sense. Bomgi's hint was, what was the last thing in the box, which is very obviously a reference to Pandora's box. And in fact, I think in the web novel, Subin almost tries to like answer. He's like, wait, isn't it and then he's interrupted because the whole point is that you have to figure it out. So we do know pretty definitively that the answer to this question is hope, which of course matches up exactly with his Morse code. Also, he's like, his character's a druid, so he's a healer, and so him being like the last hope after everything else just makes a lot of sense. I apologize for my past theories where I made him a villain. He still might be, though. I'm still not convinced he's always going to be the hope. The hope comes last. Anyway, he will bring hope at the vital moment. That's what I think. Taeyeon's hint is the one hanging upside down from an old tree with deep roots, which always gets me laughing because it's so long. And this is a reference to Odin, who hung upside down on an old tree with deep roots. And he sent like crows out to do his bidding, and if you remember his Frost scene, crows, etc. So Odin. So that's the hint. And what does Odin do? He gathers information. He gathers knowledge from different points of the world. That's why he sends his crows out, right? And so his Morse code was clue. I do think this is the one that he must have a lot of trouble coming to this conclusion and learning clue is his true name. Because from knowing Odin, I probably would have come to the conclusion that it was like knowledge or something like that. And finally, Kai's hint is the one who built the labyrinth, which, if you're going by Greek mythology, is Daedalus. Anyway, he built the labyrinth in order to conceal the Minotaur. So it's fitting that Kai's true name is Secret. because the Minotaur was a secret. Anyway, one of Kai's photo cards from earlier on even says, like, it's a secret I don't know I have. That was from the Dream Chapter Star, I think. So he doesn't actually know that he's concealing the secret, but we're going to get into Kai because there's some stuff I want to talk about with Kai later on. It's a secret, and we don't actually know the answer to the secret, by the way, but that is his true name, is Secret. Anyways, sorry for that little detour. I've been recording for 17 minutes and most of it was about the true names. I'm so sorry. Let's go back to the performance. So the ending sentence here is, "From blood and ash we rise," which, in a short that I posted previously, I speculated is a possible subtitle for the album. Hey! Editing Lena here. So this is actually completely moot point. I go on to talk about speculation about what the potential thing could be. I'm just cutting all of that because we have the title now. It is the Dream Chapter Temptation, and there's 3 versions: Daydream, Nightmare, and Farewell. Is the Starseeker's storyline coming to an end? I don't know. Maybe not. Let's just skip on to the next part of this theory. I also kind of wonder if it might be related to the dragon in their story, which is called the Dragon of the End. The end, and then they're reborn. We have seen this dragon in the Doomsnight animation before, and so in their story, they're 2, like, clans, the Dragon Slayer clan and the Dragon Sect, and they both have different goals. I won't spoil it, but they have different goals related to the dragon. I'm sure you can kind of grasp part of the goal based off of the name. But I don't know, I wonder kind of if that's related to that, because, like, we have seen in the Doomsnight a bad ending where there's a lot of potentially blood and ash, so I don't know, the dragon kills everyone, you know? And, like, actually that moment is kind of where I was like, wait, that's where Moa the ghost, the mid to light, originally came from. Because, you know, they all passed away, so they become ghosts and then try to look after TXT is kind of what's going on there, although we do know that it goes badly because, like, they did just kill their good boy selves. So yeah, either way, I do think this, like, coming out of blood and ash thing is just kind of part of the maturation process, which, as we know, because of the name chapter trailer, which, you know, this video is really late, so it's actually out now, it's something they frequently struggle to accept, and then they reference Peter Pan. So, I think for this next chapter, they're going to have to find a balance, because how can you find your true name if you don't mature a little bit and discover your true self? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to work. They have to find their fate for themselves, and that's not going to happen if they're stuck in this magical world trying to stay as young as possible with that sort of theme going on, you know? Because if they don't, we're going to see the bad endings that they had in Frost. I think in this case, their fate is going to happen regardless, and they have to be ready for it. Anyways, now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's move to their actual performance, where they're actually, this is all before they even start dancing and singing on stage. Sorry. So now with all of that build-up, knowing what we know, the beginning of their show starts off by referencing all their past albums. It's kind of like a way to show, like, how they got to where they are now. So we have the Nap of the Star reference where Yeonjun, like, breaks off his horn. Before, as said in the lyrics of Crown, someone calls out his name, and then his friends are there. And I mean, the name was obviously an important focus here because it's the name of the chapter. Anyways, the dance section that follows this has them all coming together and showing them using their magic, which happens when they're together, which I think is like an important thing to note. There's a large focus on Kai's wings, and the sky shifts to a setting sun. Blue hour, if you will. And that's also where you see the fish fly through the sky. Like we know, Kai sees both in the 0x1 = Love Song music video and in the most recent Goodbye Boy Gone Bad video. Although I think here the music, which is very nice to listen to and not scary at all, kind of shows the escapism part of 0x1 = Love Song. It's supposed to be fun, it's lighthearted, and then obviously in the Good Boy Gone Bad Japanese version, it's actually just him remembering the good times. I made a theory about that. But as it shifts into nighttime, the music stays soft. It kind of actually reminds me of the Starboard version of the Eternity album, like that whole concept, which includes the card of them like looking into the night sky and the star is there, but it's turned off. It's like it's still broken down at that point. The animation on their dance, which has them reaching up towards the star, then has like the shooting star, which hits the star and then turns into the form of a girl, Moa, our ghost. But it proves here pretty definitively, I think, which we kind of already knew, the star is Moa, like they're kind of one and the same. Things that would protect them. The soft mint light. But like I said, if you're following the story before, you know that Moa, this girl, betrays them, turns evil in their VCR for their lovesick concert tour, and basically causes the death of their good boy selves. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, Elisa over on Twitter messaged me a theory of theirs where they kind of mentioned that Moa is you, a sort of like a reflection. Very specifically, the word reflection is important here. But this idea has actually become way more relevant now with the release of the name chapter video. So I will kind of talk more about this theory in the video that I make about the name chapter. But yeah, honestly, this is a very good idea about how you can view Moa, because we've seen that Moa is equal to them. And they always like made themselves the same as Moa. Moa equals you, so it's a reflection of themselves. They also have a really cool theory where money kind of symbolizes trust in the TXT music videos, like Lose Your Lover and etc, etc. It's not relevant to this, but I just wanted to share it here because I don't know where else I can share it. So anyways, the whole dance segment after this, where they have like the magic circle, entirely reflects the Runaway era. It also has a heavy focus on time, which we know in the Runaway music video, they do kind of like rewind time a lot. So they also had a very heavy like Harry Potter focus at that time, and we do know in one of the Harry Potter movies, they have a time turner. I'm still wondering if they're gonna like do some more time travel stuff, because they do sort of keep referencing the clock and time. But that could also be just a reference to them wanting to stop time because youth. You know what I mean? Like, that's why they rewind time in the lyrics of Runaway. They're like, oh, I'm rewinding time to have fun again. I guess you could take that sort of symbolically versus directly. It's up to you. We will see. However, also here in the choreography, the people in the black hoods come to try and take Yeonjun away, which we've actually sort of seen before in the 2019 MMAs, where Yeonjun was basically kidnapped by two devils, and the others had to rescue him. In terms of their story, I'm not entirely sure what this is supposed to be showing. Okay, so I was editing this, and I saw the part with the MMA and the two devils, and I was like, you know what, I actually do wonder if I know what this is. I think that the two devils represents the two sects that are fighting against each other, so the Dragon Sect and the Dragon Slayer sect, or clan, or whatever they're called, and them kidnapping them because they want to use them for their own gains, and they're kind of caught in between this, and they want to use the powers that the boys have. I think that's kind of what's going on here, and it's kind of symbolizing and building up to that same point, and I just realized I now have an answer for 2019 MMA. Finally. Anyways, I don't know. Maybe it could also be referencing the fact that he doesn't have a shadow in the name chapter, like someone stole the shadow. We also see the whale here, which I'm super excited about. We haven't, like, technically, I think, seen the whale since the Magic concept trailer, which conveniently is in the same style as the, like, concept trailer for the name chapter, so I'm kind of excited about that. But I do love this little whale. Previously, I've kind of compared it to BTS's whale, which was made up of stars, which was made up of the ocean of army. Here, it's also made up of like many stars, and we know star is Moa. It sort of symbolizes the same thing, that they're being watched over, I think. I don't know. We don't really have a real explanation for the whale that I'm aware of, so I'm just glad it's back. I love whales. And then the mood visibly shifts here, while the boys move on to the cold and frosty Frozen Heart era. Part of the choreography here also seems to reference the concept trailer for the Freeze album, kind of hitting away the ice. There are glitches here behind them, as the music and dance sort of swap styles as well, which reminds me of when the dragon appears in the Doom's Night, but I'm not really sure like why that happens. It might be because things are going badly, they're not going according to plan, so it's like glitching out, you know what I mean? As like a symbol of danger. But we do know this danger does come into play, like in these videos like Lose Your Lover, Good Boy Gone Bad, which the end of this dance break also does reference the end of the 2021 MMAs, which shows Yeonjun and the Hole, which of course takes us into the 0 by 1 equals love song whole era, which 0 by 1 is 0. It's a hole. But also that music video starts with a book quote in Korean, which I will translate here for a second. A period of growth can be considered a universal whole in one's life. However big or small, as we pass that period of time, we experience hunger and emptiness in our souls. But to some boys, the whole becomes such a complex shape that it intrudes on their lives. That was by Kang Yu-jung, an excellent metaphor for the whole of life. Manhole. The book that they're referencing basically has the main character escape from a broken family by hiding in a manhole, like a literal manhole, like a hole in the ground. And like as usual, the quote that I mentioned also talks about growing up, which in childhood, you know, if you leave childhood behind, it does leave kind of an emptiness. You can never go back to that. And it pairs well with the Peter Pan theme, of course, from the name chapter. Just all these themes are easily like transferring into each other. They had all their fun. They don't want to leave it behind because they know it's going to have a hole. So that leads us into the Peter Pan thing, right? Whole thing where they get betrayed and then they want to go back to being free and happy and etc. And I think they have a choice to make. That's what the names chapter is going to be about. As we move into the next VCR, we're going to see a lot of themes about reflection, which I mentioned before. You and I are both a reflection of themselves, of ourselves. So you, Moa, us, Moa, are also them. And each version of reflection is themselves. Also, because it starts with Kai and mirrors, Kai has seen Moa before. Moa usually shows himself to Subin. However, Kai has been able to see Moa, and Moa takes Subin back in time where he sees a young Kai, so Moa is somehow tied to Kai. We know also these mirrors break sometime around the death of the good boy. So immediately going into this VCR, seeing Kai and the broken mirrors tells us straight away that the trust, the mirror, you, all of it is broken. The good boy has died. And these scenes show the subsequent downfall. So Kai comes in to the broken mirrors, which we know are actually also partially related to his true name with the labyrinth. So maybe it's a good thing they're broken? And there are actually 2 broken mirrors facing each other, and you know if you have a mirror facing another mirror, and you look into the mirror, it's like infinitely reflected back. So it's like infinity. It's like the labyrinth, right? It's forever expanding. And then later in his scene, flower petals fall down, which does make me think of like the rose. So it reflects like the love that he still felt, but now it's in petals, it's in pieces, just like the mirrors, which again, might not be a bad thing, actually, when you think of his frost bad ending, so maybe that's a good thing. On Bomgyu's side, it shows him lying on the ground, and then these like black ropes kind of come around and wrap around him, and he kind of becomes trapped by them, and it makes me think of the Puma music video a little bit, and it probably also symbolizes something similar, that he's feeling trapped. He needs to escape. Yeonjun, while in darkness, is against the wall with what looks like water reflecting off of his face, as if he's underwater. And this makes me think of, again, that scene in the Magic concept trailer where he is, in fact, underwater. Except now, instead of the blue, we only see darkness. Maybe I'm, like, completely blowing it out of the water here, but Moa did wear blue in the good Moa scenes in Good Boy Gone Bad, and then she switched to black, so blue to black. Also, the whale was originally in the scene, so it makes me wonder if the whale was supposed to also show Moa there, but also, like, maybe the childhood innocence or something like that, and now it's gone because he was forced to make these decisions. He was forced to eat the dog, as it was. And later he also has like several scars that appear, like, or not scars, but injuries, I guess, which we can assume is probably the causality of him using magic. It hurt him and caused him to bleed. Subin stands beneath falling rain before angrily falling to his knees, and basically just feels like the emotions of the Good Boy Gone Bad music video. Taeyeon is absent from this VCR entirely. I'm assuming it's because he couldn't attend the shoot. He was in quarantine shortly before this performance, so that's most likely why. Also because I can't narratively think of a reason why they wouldn't include him. If they did have a scene with Taeyeon, I would assume it would probably have him hanging upside down or something like that, or something with the tree again, maybe, or using his eye in some way. I don't know. That's speculation, because obviously we'll never know unless they randomly decide to tell us. But yeah, I can assume that they didn't leave him out for story reasons, and it was almost certainly because he couldn't make the shoot. Anyways, not unexpectedly, they then go into performing Good Boy Gone Bad, because what else could they have performed after something like that? Thematically, it only makes sense. Mid-performance, we get a fantastic little dance break, which I always love watching because I love dance stuff. And at the end, in the actual performance, Beomgyu pulls out a lighter only and just is like, yeah, there's a cool lighter. But in the dance practice video, we actually saw that he's supposed to light a rose on fire, much like in the concept for Good Boy Gone Bad. Now, I don't know exactly why he didn't use the rose in the actual performance, because immediately after that, the VCR, not the VCR, but like the background, shows burning roses, so clearly it was supposed to happen, and it didn't. It could have been a technical thing. He was supposed to have the rose, and for some reason the rose never made it onto the stage, or never made it into his hand. It was dropped somewhere, and we don't know what happened to it, so he made do with just the lighter. It's also possible that for some sort of safety reason, they didn't want him to try to light it on fire on the stage, and so they just substituted it only for the lighter, which it still worked for the burning of the rose theme. But if you were wondering why he had the rose in the practice, it was a reference to this, the death of their love in The Good Boy. So the idea just still remains the same anyway as the album, and effectively are killing their good boy selves. So in the choreography here, they're also surrounded by all the black hoods, only to effectively defeat them at the end of the dance break. And the boys are the only ones remaining standing. Now, I'm assuming this is hinting at a large battle in the future, obviously, where they take down like all of the people opposing them, and they're the ones who win, maybe? Since everyone seems to be trying to control their decisions and influence how they do things, because they're the boys of legend or destiny or whatever it is. Anyways, the final dance segment begins with the boys kind of like protected in a circle. Now, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a shield, but it does kind of look more like a magic circle. Either way, Kai is importantly the one who starts the dance break. Now, I know Kai's character is really significant in some ways. They're all significant, obviously, but like, we've seen a lot of focus on Kai at the end of dance breaks, turning and looking at us and beckoning us to follow him. Or in the name chapter thing, which I'm still not supposed to be talking about, he's the one who looks back at us at the end of the music video. Everyone else jumps off, presumably, and he looks back at us. By the way, we're Moa. Something to think about. On the background here, by the way, it looks like some kind of platform, which makes me think of some kind of like magical ceremony or something, maybe? Summoning of a dragon? I don't know. When they also do a top-down shot of the choreography, we see that they're dancing in a pool of water. Again! We've seen that like with TXT and Runaway, in the concept trailer for Magic with Yeonjun. It's not even funny at this point, it's just curious and suspicious. When frosty snowflakes start to appear in the background, the choreography starts by centering on Kai alone, who's then joined by Subin and Yeonjun, and they all seem to like be helping each other. And then they're joined by Beomgyu, and then they're joined by Beomgyu and Taeyeon, who seem to have a moment where they try to reach each other, but then there's like a barrier in between them, which really just makes me think of all of the times that those two have fought, and they're not getting along. Can't You See Me? Good Boy Gone Bad, the Japanese version, for example. Anyways, everyone leaves, and the only one left on stage is, say it with me now, Kai. I don't have any specific explanation for that right now. There's obviously some stuff going on with Kai and his character and his connection with us, Moa, in the story. The ghost, the mint light, the star, it's all connected, and I bet you it's his secret. I don't know, it's just so weird. He's always the one looking back at us, so it has to be related to this somehow. It is a choice that they keep making, and it's a secret he doesn't know he has, maybe. Unless there's some version of him that does know that he has it, I don't know. Will we be discovering his secret, his true name, along with him in the next chapter? I really hope so! I think there's a chance, and I have so many questions that I really just hope that we get answers to very, very soon. Anyways, on that note, let's talk about Mama. So TXT's title for their Mama show was Goodbye Romeo. Now famously, I don't really like Shakespeare. I appreciate it. I don't love it. So instead I'm going to quote someone who actually does know about this stuff. I'm going to quote another theorist here on YouTube, which you may have seen before, Bookish Theories. She made some tweets over on Twitter that I will be quoting here. The first thing is related to, quote, what is in a name, which is from the play originally, Romeo and Juliet, that is. That which we call a rose under any other name would smell as sweet, which is a lovely quote. Basically, it's like we call a rose this, but it's still a rose even if we called it something else. Like, you know, if it's said in another language or something, it might not be the word rose, but looking at that, it was still a rose. So the most important thing, of course, isn't necessarily the name that you call it. However, as we know, Romeo is just trying to say, oh, I'm not your enemy, because Romeo and Juliet are from like opposite and enemy families or whatever. So it is in fact an important thing, because even though they say, oh, the word and the name isn't important, the theme of the story is that their names were actually very important. And we're going into the name chapter. So the name is important. In Romeo and Juliet's case, it kind of leads to their downfall. The same can be said probably about TXT. If they ignore the fact that they don't know their true names, we're gonna get frost endings. Also, she tweeted that the sets took a lot of inspiration, and I mean direct inspiration, from the 1996 Romeo and Juliet film, and it's definitely identical. So what are they doing with this theme here, besides the true name thing that I already talked about? Taking in what we know about Good Boy Gone Bad, especially factoring in the Japanese version. We can assume that the death here, like the graveyard and all of that, is a symbolic death, not like the real one in Romeo and Juliet. TXT are obviously Romeo, by the way. I feel like I should just mention that. We saw the same imagery style in Good Boy Gone Bad Korean version, so it's not surprising they're using like the whole death imagery here. Again, as it was in the Korean version of Good Boy Gone Bad, they aren't actually dying. They're just killing a particular version of themselves so a new one can rise from the ashes.
I like being bad.
And we do already know it was Moa turning on TXT who caused the death of this. Moa being Juliet, I guess, in this case, and causing the death of Romeo. It's been a while since I've read Romeo and Juliet, but I think Juliet faked her death so that she could get put there, but then Romeo thought she was actually dead, so he kills himself, and then Juliet is like, oh no, he's gone ahead and killed himself, and then she kills herself, and then they're both dead. So like the apparent death of Juliet, TXT follows suit. Starts with opening sequence, which in the first lines of that song, it tells us that it is replaying the moment that causes this death, basically. In this case, it is the betrayal of Moa in their storyline. The betrayal, the moment of the breakup. It ends with them separated and a focus on Yeonjun as he falls. And notably, he does seem to fall in front of the eye that we see as like a background in the Good Boy Gone Bad music video. The one that I previously equated to an evil eye in the theory for that video, which is like a way to ward off jealousy and people who will wish you harm. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually the chosen interpretation for it, but that was the one that made the most sense to me at the time and how I've chosen to interpret it, but I did give other options in that video. In the next VCR that's shown, we see a tattoo appear on his hand, starting in his ring finger, and they're the lyrics for Lonely Boy, emphasizing stay lonely. Just like the lyrics of the song talk about. You're not gone, even the traces left behind are lonely. I left a stamp with a sharp needle. A mark was placed where the ring sits, a tattoo called you on the fourth finger. Even though, like the ending of Romeo and Juliet, they both killed their good selves, in the end, he is still lonely. It's a tragedy, tragedy, tragedy. Anyways, it makes sense when he takes the ring off. We did see it discarded in the Good Boy Gone Bad music video. So this is thematically following that. So of course, it makes sense that they end this performance with Good Boy Gone Bad, since all of that was a lead up to what that song is actually talking about. The death of the good boy and the rising of the bad boy. Something I hope that we are intimately familiar with at this point, since it was covered extensively in the previous performance and just throughout all the music videos. It's their current era. Anyways, the final dance break for Good Boy Gone Bad is awesome. I love it. It immediately tells us that they went bad, and I love that it leads in with Beomgyu. His facial expressions are on point, and I love him. There is a part that has Taeyeon seemingly mimicking, like, shooting himself in the head, which reminds me of last year's MMA, where Yeonjun did the same thing, but with a mask on, you know, symbolizing the death of the persona, the good boy persona, perhaps. Persona! The tone shifts a bit, and then Subin and Yeonjun, who, while Subin seems to have a cloth in his mouth, I think it's supposed to be around his eyes, because in the dance practice they both have the cloth wrapped around their eyes. They're both unable to see. They perform their dance break. Now, I'm kind of imagining that this has something to do with the fact that Yeonjun is unable to see the deception until it's too late, and then how Subin can see the future, but he can't really see the events leading up to the future, and so he's kind of blinded by that as well. And also, he can't really talk about it with anyone. So they're both unable to share certain aspects of themselves. Think that's why those two were chosen to be blindfolded. Although, if you have your own theory, please let me know what you think, because I'm not 100% sure on this one. Anyways, the dancers around them are notably in a cross formation, like an X, as in like, da-da, like you can't, da-da. You can't, like, no, it's not happening. You can't see, you can't move, you are helpless. Insert other synonyms here. They can't see their error despite the temptation. They can't see their errors because of the temptations. Anyway, there's the sound of like a sword being unsheathed, like, and then these cloths come off and they can see again. They're freed from these bindings, so presumably the two free each other somehow. However, later, as rose petals are thrown into the air, you have to wonder if they were truly freed. That was the like remnants of their love, or maybe it is their love. I don't know, maybe they were blinded and they couldn't see the deception of Moa, and then now there was like, oh, that was my love, and they crushed the flower. I don't know. But the music does seem to agree with this. It swaps between the angelic and then like the weird like glitchy dubstep that we have is like I can't play the music, but like you can go and watch the performance again and you'll hear what I mean. It's like switching between the angelic and then like glitches. So who do they want to be? Good boy? Bad boy? Who are they gonna be? But inevitably they make their choice because the song resumes. Yeonjun's laughter, and he says, I like being bad. It was nowhere near as cool as Yeonjun does it. And of course, in the music video, that's the part where Yeonjun wakes up and he's revived as his bad boy self. So, thus ends their performance. I hope that all made sense to you. Let me know what you think about their performance. And yeah, that ends the TXT segment of this video. Let's quickly move on to the Sserafim. Now, Le Sserafim's concept in Hype's universe is really new. So their performance doesn't really focus too much on the actual story that we are being told in the webtoon. It's new. But I just wanted to put this here anyways because their choreography is so good. It was so cool. I was dying the whole time. They made really good use of the stage in general. Like during Hydra, I think I was losing my mind when they lifted Chaewon up and she was like, the intro dance was literally so good in terms of choreography. They were all basically like pieces of the Hydra. The Hydra in mythology, you know, has the like heads and then you cut off the head and another one grows. And the dance kind of reflects that. So in a way, they're kind of anti-fragile because they keep growing. I also watched the Mama performance. That was the MMA performance. I don't think I said that was the MMA performance, but that was about the MMA performance. I also watched the Mama performance. And there's literally only really one thing that I want to comment on this, besides their awesome dance and performing skills. The name of their performance is Dear You Who Wish for My Fall. The Y in you being capitalized. And at the end, they have a flag, a white flag, which normally, you know, you raise up if you are surrendering, and it says what it said at the end of the Anti-Fragile music video. Do you want to be forgiven? And then it's followed by an answer. You don't have to. And I think this whole thing is a sentence, not just the end part. Dear you who wish for my fall, do you want to be forgiven? You don't have to. Now this is possibly a tiny bit of shade towards their haters, but it's also potentially a hint to their next album. Because, as we know, at the end of the first music video asks, do you think I'm fragile? And now with Anti-Fragile, they answer that question. They have the strength to pull through anything and pull themselves together. That's why the album is broken apart and then fit together with the gold in between. It's it's similar to kintsugi, which is Japanese art of fixing ceramics with gold and making them more beautiful. So, like they said, you don't have to want to be forgiven, but perhaps they might forgive you anyways. Like, I don't know, what if the next album is something like Forgiven or Surrendered, or I don't know, I honestly am not sure like what direction they're gonna take it in, so let me know what you think about that. I don't know, I'm really excited already. Do you have a theory for their next comeback? Please let me know. Or if you think any of this ties into their storyline, let me know how you think that happens. Just leave a comment, please. Tell me what you think, because I'm really excited. Alright, anyways, that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, if you watched all of it, and if you didn't watch all of it and you just watched the end part or whatever, thank you for being here and clicking. I really appreciate it. If you did like this video and you haven't yet already, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you are subscribed with notifications on so that YouTube tells you every single time I post a video, and I am posting a lot of videos these days, especially if you like reading the webtoon. In the description, I have the link to my second channel. I have linked to my social media, so you can check those out. And of course, I want to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. I really appreciate it. If you want to become a patron, chat in our private Discord server, etc., etc., the link is in the description down below and probably on the screen here somewhere. All right, as it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, everyone.